hear like bits and pieces of the harmony kind of coming together, a lot of 5 and 1, but even in between some of that stuff, the harmony's not really moving in a way that like our chord diagram would say is correct. All right. So all of this kind of is the precursor to what Fuchs was like kind of doing with counterpoint, creating melody and bass lines that fit together, that create independent parts. They kind of break it down here step by step, but again, a lot of this is already stuff that we've done, but there's just a few more extra rules that go into it. And the reason why I'm bringing all this up is not for that you have to memorize all these rules, but it could help you create maybe a little bit more perspective on what your soprano and your bass is doing within your own little chorale project that you have to do for next Monday. The harmonic rhythm, usually what you see in these type of examples is going to be half notes rather than quarter notes. So on either beat 1 or 3 is where you place the notes, as opposed to like 4/4 time, 1, 2, 3, 4. Beginning and ending, each phrase will begin and end on a tonic or dominant harmony. So much like what we're doing, not much has changed. If a phrase begins with a dominant harmony, make it an upbeat by beginning on beat 3. So composing a bass line. Notate everything in root position. All right, staying within the same range that we have. Again, mostly stepwise. You could even start with a bass line that kind of follows the same ideas of like your melody that we've talked about in the past. So starting with the melody or starting with the bass line. All right, this is the part that we've kind of gone over that I want to definitely review for the chorale project. Determining chords that must remain in root position. All right, the first chord and the last chord should be in root position, and that should be also for your chorale project. The first chord, the last chord should be in root position. The 5 chord in a 5-to-1 cadence should also be in root position. Now that's not the case in your chorale project. If you were saying ending with an imperfect authentic cadence, that was an inverted imperfect authentic cadence, then your 5 chord, could be in first inversion, or really your 1 chord, I guess, at the very end could be a root first inversion as well. The 6th chord after a 5 chord, we have talked about this before as well. When you have a 6th chord, when you have a 5 to 6 progression, a deceptive progression, the 6th chord needs to stay in root position. Otherwise, it doesn't sound right. And I've played that, I've demonstrated that before. It sounds like a 1 chord with a wrong note when you do that. So it should be a 6th chord should be in root position when it's preceded by a 5 chord. So just by looking at that bass line that they started with, determining which chord should be in root position. They circled the notes that should definitely be in root position. The first chord, and the second last chord, and the last chord. Then determining which chords should be in first inversion. So again, when you're going through your chorale project, determining should this be a first inversion chord or not be a first inversion. Some of them you do have options, like it could be either or. Others, they have to be first inversion. Diminished triads have to be first inversion. I've been harping on this for a while now, so that's nothing new. Either 5 or 1, but not both in an internal 5-to-1 progression. So if you have a 5-to-1 somewhere in the middle of your progression. I'm not that so forth, but I think it's a good thing. You're not really changing the course, it's the order fit either way. Then think about improving your base contour. Having notes in the base is not necessarily a good thing. And especially when they repeat for the bar line. You do want to wait with that. So if I'm in, say, key C, I go G, 1, 5, again, over the bar line, repeating that same G, I would, like, that's something that needs to be avoided. It really does cause confusion as far as the listener goes. Like, you start to lose your place a little bit. Like where the one, it kind of takes away the strength of beat one when you do that, when that happens. So avoid repeated notes over the bar line. So that if you really wanted to have a 5 chord there, I would suggest then 5 chord in first inversion. Something, although I would probably avoid repeating the same chord too, but if you really had a repeat, and yeah, I probably wouldn't even repeat the chord. I think you almost have to have a different chord in there, other than you put a different version. It can also give you, like, if there's too many, like, oh, here we go, tonal variety. So adding inversion to a chord can give you a different variety of notes to use that as well for bass line. So you're not, you notice, like, if it keeps going back to the same note over and over, use an inversion to spice it up a little bit. We haven't really gone through this as much, so this won't be the case for our neural project, but for this type of variety, your bass needs a focal point. And it could be a highest point or a single point in one. Inversions, so another reason so using a melodic point out as an option can get you out of a couple sticky situations. You went 4, 5, 1, C, D, G. Now with our soprano, when we up like that, we don't have the augment second rock. So 1. So like this style of writing, it's safe not to use any 6/4 chords at all. Obviously, with our corral, I'm requesting that you do a 6/4 chord, but that's fine for this style. CC's counterpoint, 1 to 1. All right. So compose a bass line. This is a nice way to just kind of step by step think about your bass line. Like if you have the chord progression, and then you write everything out in root position, like they have here. So it's an E minor, E, B, C, F sharp, B. So it's ending on a 5 chord. Mandatory pitches that have to be in root position. So the first chord, the 6th chord, because it's preceded by 5, 5, 6, and then the final 5 chord, the final chord needs to be in root position. And then mandatory first inversion pitches. So why is this 5 chord going to be a first inversion?
Follows 1.
Well, it's not at the end, right? So any type of 1 in the middle should one or the other. I think that's or the one or the other. So the 5 chord is going to be first inversion, or the 1 chord is going to be first inversion. And then the 2 chord first inversion is diminished. That goes to the next inversion. Look at this. If we change this one as well, you can't keep the C where it's at. I don't have it lead up to me, but I might have it see it come to the A there, which then in that case I don't want to lead me up to the G because that's the interval of 7. You can have it go down to G. You could also have it maybe go stepwise up to C. In that case, you have to do that. That could be an option. We have a leap of a fifth here. If we have first inversion 6, I could soften that leap a little bit. So now we have a leap of a third and then a fourth. We do have 3 leaps in a row, so I might not want that necessarily in my baseline. I think it even stays it somewhere. I don't think I read it, but I think more than 2 leaps in a row is something you want to avoid. This is one possibility. If we did, so we cut that up there. Now we don't have nearly a leap. We got a 5, 6. Well, that's not in our case here. Do we do an A? Do that. Now we have stepwise going up, a leap down, stepwise going up, a leap down, stepwise. So it's kind of almost like a little pattern integrating. That contour. This is a little contour of the baseline. There's lots of different options. There are a few different options, not a lot, but a few to create. Let's see what offers. Repeated pitches, pitch repeated across the bar. Yes, all over and over and over. Here's most too much in the direction, all the way up. No upper or lower focal point. Overly restrictive range. It's too tight. It's like it ranges from A down up to a D, so a fourth. I leave as a result. Make sure I use them a lot higher. I didn't do right now. Too large lead. So these are all things we've done before. So let me work on that. I think we can work on them together. Yeah, I think I'm going to skip this part now too because I want to use the rest of the time at this point to review for the exam. Question rating. Again, a lot of this you already knew or should know, but I want the whole reason for me to always just review it a little bit more, especially about making these, remembering the rules about contour, about focal point, about having the big peaks or anything like that. Making sure it's going into the lead in the opposite direction, going out of the lead opposite direction, and hopefully you have a better. At least moving forward, I get about baseline a little more interesting as well. All right. Last week we went back into the non-chord tones that we left off last week with. Actually, kind of wrapped up more or less last week. I feel like we pretty much reviewed everything that will be on this exam. I want to make sure that we have time. Is there anything in particular that I can question about? Are there still about or maybe some more things to go over? But I did not read that. So we have a read. I didn't go back to the ECG. So where is the first measure? Where is the class non-chord notes? We have to make this texture. Maybe we're going alto. We're in P notes in our alto. So step up or step down. If I can see, that'd be great. Where else can we put on chord tones? We put rotations. Brown is the step up. As you know, the third because we skip. Press some B flat in the middle.
Suspension base.
Suspension of the base word. What type of suspension should that be then?
So the base loops.
Yeah, the base loops is a little bit tricky. So what you're trying to find the most dissonant interval out of the bunch. So if you have the C, that's a fifth, that leads to a 6. That's not that dissonant. Here you got another C. So the other option is F to G, which is 9 for a second. It's all the way to a third, G to E to G. So it's 2, 3. Usually what happens in bass is a 2, 3. Which is good. What about some of our other non-chord tones that we studied from chapter 13? The Pagina. We put a Pagina. How would you do it? Right. So that F, and then it goes to G. Where would the A fall? that? Like that. Maybe. Let's do one more goal here. We've done this a few times already. It was on your quiz as well. So I'm going back. Hint, there's a good chance that this will be on the quiz or on the exam. Writing a cadence and then adding your non-chord tones to that measure. So let's keep doing that. And let's say you have to write imperfect, like a perfect off cadence. And let's say you're going to use a suspension and a C. Alright, so that being the case, we'll use our chord progression. Joy, what do you think? What has to happen in our chord progression? 5 to 1. And we have, say, 3 chords, like this example asks us to do. We need them one more chord to start. 2. So 2 chords G, B flat, D, or 5 chords C, E, G, and 1 chord F, A, C. So we're going to position. Alright, and then to make a perfect off cadence is one more step, which is what? Yeah, try to send that. So I recommend here in my spread line, that kind of gives me leads idea where to start. The kind of starts probably under that, or both start off. So if we're going to use first, we work, these chords, number of we live two chords, we just So we have 4 tones, so we have to 9 chord tones, and then it's leading up to it's saving up. It's probably fine to do it normally. We'll do it the same side as or especially happening, but it's like your own option. Or either another option. Actually, yeah. Let's see. Maybe we don't start with 2. So any of those the options were taken down in the face. We'll wait what's happening about a lot of different options. What about if we were going to put in the hot chord? Okay, yeah, how would we write that? You can think. Say, put the one. What about our 2 chord? Yeah, so now we do 2. Yes, now we have our 5 chord. We probably don't do that with our timer, because we just read it parallel lines. If the timer pretty special. Okay, for maybe watching a little seasonal cover, also this time. That's time. What about the 5 chord? Yeah, that would be another thing I would suggest. When you're working through the self-test and through the examples, looking, analyzing music, looking for the non-chord and being able to think alright, questions? Anything else before I go? Yeah, what's it? The calendar, there's part of this. Any other final questions? Alright, so let's say, again, just like all the exams, you have a little day for a long time to work on anything. Should definitely no time to do anything. Alright, any more questions?